delay, as y'all, anyone who's been around here long enough to know that schedules around here are fluid and changing by the minute. And so again, I apologize for the delay, but we have about 45 minutes. So we'll I've spoken briefly to our presenters, and so we may have to cut that down to 17 minutes or so per side to get through the agenda in our remaining allotted time. But bear with us. So hopefully there'll be a few more members coming in as they're leaving. But I want to say thank you to everyone who showed up today, especially the folks who are going to present to us today. There's a lot going on around Georgia, and a lot of our different conservation partners are at work, and they're doing some great things that affect every one of us in every single district around the state. Okay, hunting and fishing is very valued to our state. So much that we passed a constitutional amendment. The state has always been one of the best states, I believe, to hunt and fish in, and I think a lot of that thanks and should go to the conservation groups that work with, through their constituents, work with these conservation groups and with our DNR, and that's the purpose of the presentations today. We're going to let me real quick. We're going to do two presentations, and then the last sort of 10 minutes, we're going to talk about a bill and assign it to a subcommittee for hearing. That bill will be at the end of our time today. First presentation is going to be by Ducks Unlimited in coordination with our Wildlife Resources Division, and we have Jeff Barnes here. Where's Jeff? You want to come up, Jeff? And real quick, guys, this is if you do hunt and fish in Georgia and you love waterfowl, a lot of the success that we've had over the years in making sure that our waterfowl population is not only sustained and a great hunting opportunity for us, but I think they're a great success in a lot of ways, because we've seen our waterfowl numbers in a lot of parts of the country go up. The other thing that I'm proud of DU and not only Ducks Unlimited, but a lot of our other conservation partners is they understand our needs. And I think one of the things that Ducks Unlimited has done is hunter recruitment. And I know you're going to touch on that, Jeff, but thank you for coming today. And by the way, guys, for the committee members and for the audience, 2018, our own Matt Dubnick is going to be the DU state chair. So if we got a Ducks question, I think he's going to be that. John, okay. But congratulations. That does show what we've got representation out there. A lot of these folks on this committee, they don't only support hunting and fishing, but they also live it, and that's great to have that kind of participation in this committee. With that, Jeff, if you will, floor is yours.
Well, thank you, Chairman Knight. Thank you, Representatives, for allowing me to represent Ducks Unlimited today. Just last week, on January 29th, Ducks Unlimited began its 80th year of wetlands conservation. And we're very proud of that and the heritage that we have there, and then we look forward to going forward in the future. And what began as a response from waterfowl hunters as a recognition of their own deteriorating conditions in their own environment has now become the world's leader in effective private waterfowl wetlands conservation organization. Since that time, DU has conserved more than 13 million acres of waterfowl habitat across North America, and that's through 4,000 local fundraising events, and DU volunteers generate more than 500,000 memberships since that time, and raise more than $53 million annually towards wetlands conservation. As waterfowl are a continentally shared resource, Ducks Unlimited has worked hard across North America since its creation to ensure a strong future for ducks and waterfowlers alike. But what does that mean to us here in Georgia? Locally, what we have here is a very strong chapter, and as we've said, Matt Dubnick will be taking over our chairmanship next year. The way that North America is broken down is that there's 4 major flyways. There's the Pacific, the Central, the Mississippi, and the Atlantic. And Georgia sits in the Atlantic flyway, and while we're not known as a duck capital of the world, as some other states, we are an important state to many species of not only ducks but other waterfowl. We have areas that are represented by Representative Williams and Spencer and Nimmer, that provide important habitat on the coast for our diver ducks such as lesser scaup and our puddle ducks like green-winged teal. We also have in interior wetlands and beaver ponds in areas by Representative Dubnik and Donahue at Lake Lanier that winter mallards and wood ducks alike. So we're a very important state, even though we may not be known for that nationally. Since 1985, Ducks Unlimited has completed 53 projects in Georgia and conserved nearly 27,000 acres. And that's with having more than $2 million invested in Georgia through conservation projects such as the Banks Lake National Wildlife Refuge near where Representative Shaw represents in Lanier County. And I'm glad to get the nod there. So, yeah, I really want to make sure that you guys understood that we're working in your areas. And we also are working at Arrowhead Habitat Enhancement in Rome, where we've had some of our youth events. And I'll touch on that in just a moment. Locally, Georgia is made up of 69 local chapters for Ducks Unlimited, and they all share the same vision to fill our skies with waterfowl today, tomorrow, and forever. And the beneficiaries and stewards of those filled skies for tomorrow and forever are our youth of today. And that's why it's so important and become a priority one initiative for Ducks Unlimited Incorporated to focus on our youth retention and education. According to the National Shooting Sports Foundation, the average resident hunter is 42 years old, and that age is just getting older and older as older hunters are leaving or retiring or just going on, and we don't have that new generation coming in to fill the gap. This has been recognized and shared by Ducks Unlimited as a common problem and one that needs our attention. It is one of our top priorities to introduce children at a young age to the sound principles of conservation, of which hunting is essential. We recognize the importance of educating the general public, including children, about the relationships between good stewardship of habitat, hunting, and the long-term sustainability of our natural resources. We are able to share with our youth that hunters do more for conservation than any other groups combined, and we'll discuss how the state of hunting licenses, tags, and stamps are the primary source of funding for most of the state wildlife conservation efforts, that the money funds not only helps out hunted animals, but non-hunted animals also. Ducks Unlimited prides itself on habitat enhancements that help over 900 species throughout North America. That's a lot more than just a few ducks and geese. We do this through our Green Wing program to educate our youth. The Green Wing, our Youth and Education program, is broken into 3 different areas, and those are by age. We have our Green Wings, which is our birth through 11 years old, and there we focus on getting the family involved, getting people out and outside, and we have youth-specific events. We have about 100 of them nationally, and we have 4 of them here in Georgia. And that's the time when the family can get out together and experience things like BB gun shooting and archery and retriever demonstrations. But it's also to allow them the opportunity to see that there are other like-minded people who enjoy conservation, enjoy the outdoors, and it's okay to be a hunter, and it's okay to enjoy shooting sports. One of the other areas that we focus on with this age group is electronics, and forever you keep hearing that people keep saying, we've got to get these kids away from electronics, got to get them away from the computer or the Xbox or whatever. Ducks Unlimited has a little bit different approach. They've said those electronics aren't going anywhere, so let's provide them some content. So we have some youth-specific websites that give them an opportunity to play games and look at pictures and do waterfowl identification to where they're still on their devices they're comfortable with, but we're helping tailor the content that they see. And we're able to encourage them to turn around and look out a window and go explore some of the things that they're looking at on that website. I would like to call your attention to this beginner's guide that some of you may have in front of you. This is one of the booklets that we use for education that we hand out to all of our Green Wings. And inside there you'll see a fact sheet. And that fact sheet is marking a section called Understanding Waterfowl and Conservation. And this is the area where we really like to pride ourselves on and put a lot of effort in, is helping these kids understand where they fit into the big picture of conservation. And that includes anything from the conservation and preservation of our habitat to hunting and other aspects that are required for sustainability. Our next age group is the DU Varsity, where we have our high school age kids, the 12 to 17, and we continue on the foundation of conservation, but here we also start building on their business skills, their communication skills, give them an opportunity to interact with adults and start preparing them to be successful adults and successful educated hunters. There's a national scholarship program that's been approved and is being funded currently with a youth and education endowment that will fund 61 scholarships, and that will start next year in January 2018. Our last stage of youth and education is our Ducks University, and that's for the ages 18 and up, which is our college age. This program began in 1985, and we have about 100 active chapters, and those active chapters raised over $2 million. These are college students that raised $2 million for wetlands conservation. I'd like to recognize the University of Georgia at this time for being one of the top 16 chapters in the nation for Ducks Unlimited collegiate chapter. So that's a huge accomplishment that they've been able to accomplish. And we also provide them a leadership summit each year in Memphis. And so of those 100 chapters, they all get invited back to Ducks Unlimited headquarters to meet with people in different regions to see what they're working on, to see how the habitat is different in their areas and what they can bring and share and learn with each other here in Georgia, and what Georgia can share with other organizations. The Youth and Education program here in Georgia offers youth the opportunity to learn about wetland conservation that we as Ducks Unlimited members prioritize so highly. We try to stress that hunters are vital to conservation and rather than being villains. Responsible gun ownership and ethical hunting practices are non-negotiable and are just as important to the future of our right to hunt the land that we work so hard to protect, and that's something we stress very strongly with them. This education is accomplished by hosting youth-specific events I talked about, providing the educational materials, the Greenwing programs we just discussed, and then something we started here in Georgia last year, the Greenwing Grand membership drive. What our goal there was to get 1,000 youths in Georgia signed up. And I'm very happy to say that as of January 1st, we went from 808 members last year to 1,018, so we were able to meet our goal. So we have over 1,000 children ages 11 and under signed up as part of our Greenwing program here in Georgia. And we're just looking to build on that even further. This was over a 250% increase in that same time frame from the year prior for the chapters that participated in that. So it's a huge success, and we're very proud of it. Our mission is to conserve, restore, and manage wetlands and associated habitats for North America's waterfowl. Our vision is to have wetlands sufficient to fill the skies with waterfowl today, tomorrow, and forever. And we want to thank you as legislators for what you're doing today and tomorrow to help us keep those skies filled. Thank you.
Jeff, and I'm gonna get where's our chief game official title? No, Jeff, stay up there and just
okay.
bring another chair up and let John get at the helm for a second, because we may ask questions. But real quick, I can remember I was a Greenwing.
Great.
When Jeff talks about his efforts at the state level, Jeff and I are volunteers for Ducks Unlimited. We give of our time and our energy and our efforts. But when he talked about the University of Georgia and the youth that are doing things, we're not just educating them, we're making them volunteers. At the high school level and at the college level, these guys are raising money. So just wanted to give that, and I appreciate the time, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, guys. And again, I know we could talk about this all day, but due to the scheduling conflict, I want to make sure we get an opportunity for our second. If y'all stick around, and maybe the committee have more questions and talk about the projects in their district. Real quick, if y'all will welcome our next presenter, Jeff Watkins, who is a member of the Boone and Crockett Club, along with Dean Dell Green of our UGA school, Warnell School of Forestry. Guys, this is, we've as they come up to talk about their next presentation, I want you to listen real closely, because we've talked about recruitment and the next generation. It's not only the next generation of hunters and conservationists, but it goes into the very fabric of the next generation of wildlife biologists. And I think that's very important to the state, and especially what Boone and Crockett has initiated in other states, and using Georgia as one of the first, not necessarily the first, but one of the places to get this next program off. Please listen, because this is very important to the future. Dean, take it off.
Mr. Chairman, thank you, and committee members for inviting us here and for your time. We appreciate the opportunity to let you know about an effort that we have underway jointly with the Boone and Crockett Club. The Warnell School of Forestry and Natural Resources celebrated its 110th year last year. We're the oldest natural resource program in the Deep South, and we're very blessed to have one of the best wildlife management programs anywhere in the country. Certainly, we think it's the top in the Southeast. Many of our graduates go to work in agencies that are overseen by your committee. We appreciate the things you do for parks, game, fish, and all of that. The Boone and Crockett Club likewise has a long history. They were one of the oldest conservation organizations. Teddy Roosevelt and his counterparts helped found that. They're perhaps best known today for keeping the big game book for gun-killed game, but they got into this because they shared the concern a lot of us as sportsmen also had about back in those days, late 1800s, what was going to happen to our game populations, and they led the efforts to start this what's now a very successful North American model of wildlife conservation. And so we were particularly interested in partnering with them and started a conversation a little over a year and a half ago to bring one of their endowed professorships and programs to the University of Georgia. Prior to our signing an agreement with them back in July, they had no such program in the Southeast. They had a highly successful one at Michigan State, one at Montana, and at some other places in the West. But we're excited to have it here with us. We think it adds an extra dimension to our program. We are going to focus particularly on wildlife policy and law. We already are offering a wildlife law class this semester, one of only two focused on wildlife law, not animal rights law. And I have our dean of the law school, Bo Rutledge, to thank for partnering on that. And really the driving force behind that was Dan Forrester, who all of y'all know through his role with WRD, one of our grads who's recently retired from that. So the plan is to endow a $5 million professorship that's going to focus on wildlife law and policy, particularly with a focus on big game. But it will benefit all of wildlife conservation in the state, game and non-game, through helping us keep policies in place that support regulated ethical sport hunting, that's scientifically based, that continues to have society's support. That's been the foundation underneath our very successful program here in the United States for years. And so we're tickled to have that at the University of Georgia. I'd also just mention that in addition to the very successful student chapter of Ducks Unlimited that we've heard about, our student chapter of the National Wild Turkey Federation is partnering with DNR and the Quality Deer Management Association and Georgia Wildlife Federation and Safari Club International and probably some others I'm overlooking on their R3 efforts to try to get more people into hunting. Very excited to see our students doing that, training their counterparts in hunter safety and then taking them out on some small game hunts, often on our property that's in y'all's WMA program, then showing them how to cook that game, the whole picture. Just excited to see our young people engaged in that, similar to what we see with the DU chapter and some of the young folks that are in the Quality Deer Management Association. Boone and Crockett is, as I say, an old organization. They have 100 full members by charter. Jeff is one of the two in Georgia, and I've enjoyed partnering with him. We've got a lot of work to do to finish funding this, but I'll let him tell you about this opportunity from their side. I appreciate him taking the time from his law practice to be here today.
Thank you. And Jeff, thank you. I know Commissioner and I were at a dinner prior to the session sort of hearing about this initiative, and I tell you, it really hits home the need for it. So if you will, let the committee know more about it.
Mr. Chairman, how much time do I have? I got at least 5 minutes?
Oh, yes.
Okay. First of all, thank you, everyone, for allowing me to be here. I have the honor and really the unbelievable privilege to be a regular member of the Boone and Crockett Club. As Dale indicated, I'm one of only two folks. The other gentleman is kind of inactive. He's an older guy, and which really makes it the most challenging. In a minute, I'll tell you a little bit about Boone and Crockett, but it's what makes it the most challenging. The brochure that's being passed around talks about the other clubs, the other endowed professorships at the other universities the club has really done over the last 15 years. The poster child is Michigan State. Fortunately for the club, there's about 20 members, regular members, from Michigan, and several of them are fairly wealthy, and they pretty much funded that program themselves. We don't really have that privilege in Georgia. A lot of folks really don't know a lot about the club. They may be alumni of Georgia like myself, which is why the club asked me to do this, but we've got to raise the money. We got to raise $2.5 million. The school already has $2.5 million ready to be used, but I've got to help. Me and a couple other guys have got to raise $2.5 million over the next 5 years. The Boone and Crockett Club has an annual meeting every year. Dale thankfully came to the one they had in Tucson this past December. The annual meeting this coming December is in Savannah, first time they've had it in Georgia. So I would like to at least tell all the naysayers within the club that really think we're going to have a hard time doing this in Georgia, that we've at least raised $1 million for the endowed professorship. Big challenge, but hopefully I can do it. And I would just ask all of y'all, if you have any ideas, anyone, I know all the organizations, Ducks Unlimited, all these other organizations are very worthy of money, but I would ask that maybe we focus on this endeavor, because quite frankly, as Dale can attest, kids that are being educated in the universities, especially UGA, are not necessarily like Dale. They're not necessarily like you and I. They didn't grow up hunting. They watch the Wildlife Channel, Planet, Animal Planet. They don't know the difference between conservation and preservation. I mean, they're clueless. And those are the ones that will be teaching the next generation. And it is a call, a clarion call, that if we don't wake up and do something about it, we're all going to be talking like old people, you know, hey, this is the way it used to be. And we want to make sure that doesn't happen. All right? So all I would ask is that I sent this around. It's got my cell phone number. Call me day or night, and my email address at my law firm. I'm in Cartersville, just up the road. If anyone's got any ideas for me to contact someone, we're kind of going to go on the road over the next 6 months, try to have some dinners in different towns. If your town, if you know a few people that would be interested in this, please let me know. I would like for you to, you know, maybe help me reach out to these folks, invite them to dinner, invite them to lunch. We'll do a one-on-one, or we'll do something, a dinner for several folks.
And
But
Jeff,
anything you can help.
Jeff, this is, guys, I want to expand on why we're raising money a little bit to make sure that you mentioned it, Dean, you mentioned it. Guys, you know, our wildlife biologists that are coming up through school now, okay? And you mentioned Animal Planet. It was funny, I got drawn for Dylane, you know, quail hunting this year, and I was talking to one of the young men from University of Georgia who was a hunter, but a duck hunter. He'd never been quail hunting before, but he's doing a research, you know, he was on Dylane doing some research. But he said the other biologist that was there was a girl, you know, a lady from Chicago. I said, what is she doing here? And he said, well, she likes reptiles, you know, and I was like, what? And he said, she hunts. I said, no, but she watched Animal Planet. And so what's happening, guys, is we've got the next generation of students who are coming up and want to be wildlife biologists, but they weren't raised on a farm. They wasn't raised hunting and fishing, okay? And their idea of what wildlife is the Animal Planet, where we all coexist and we all, you know, get along, and just as long as everything's natural, and so they forget that you know, hunters and fishermen are the conservationists. And as we look at what the program that the dean just explained to us is that this this position is actually going to go in and say, hey, you know, this is why we're doing what we're doing, okay? The purpose of it is like you said, it's wildlife law. It's not, you know, wildlife activist or animal rights law, and that's what's getting infiltrated through our schools. Guys, I'm hearing it already today in different fields that, you know, we've got students out there who are in the field, and I know where's Mark Whitney? He'll briefly, you know, speak at the end too, but we already got debates about predation and management and things like that. And so what's happening is we're drifting away from hunting and fishing, and we're drifting back to animal rights type, you know, biology model versus what the, you know, the hunters and fishermen, the true conservationists is. That is why this is so important. And I hope I said that right, or put it in context
if I could add
of
to that, Mr. Chairman. folks that we're talking to and reaching out to within the school doesn't have to be a hunter. But they need to understand that we gotta have sustainable use. The way to properly manage animals is they have to have a value, and hunting is a method of conservation. Whether you agree with hunting, whether you are a hunter, they need to understand that that is key. And that is certainly not being taught in the schools very much anymore, and that's what's gonna help us do that. Just real quickly about the club, it's a long story how I was asked to join, and I can get into that on the side after the meeting, but the club is, if you ask anybody that hunts, you know, what do you know about Boone and Crockett? They'll say, well, it's a scoring system, and they keep track of record trophies. Well, that's true, but there's a whole lot more than that. And quite frankly, the only reason the club does that and has done it over the last 100 years is because Theodore Roosevelt and some of his other members thought that animals that you hunt would be extinct. The reason the Heads and Horns collection in the New York Zoological Society, the New York Zoo that William Hornady put there, is because they were thinking that most people won't ever get to see an animal. They thought they were going to be extinct with the market hunting and everything else. So that's why it's there. It's kind of gravitated into people, you know, I made the book and great, you know, pound my chest. But it's a lot more than that. I mean, quite frankly, the club is well connected from a federal standpoint. And just real briefly, if I could, it's staggering what the club has accomplished. Theodore Roosevelt started the club in 1887 with the help of George Bird Grinnell, who was the editor of Forest and Stream. They, as well as 8 other folks from New York City, some industrialists, a couple of high-powered politicians, started the club. And their accomplishments over the years have been starting with Yellowstone Protection Act, first time the government ever got involved in conservation. The National Forest System, I guess the grandfather of forestry, Gifford Pinchot, he was a member. All right, established the Code of Ethical Conduct for Sportsmen, which has become known as Fair Chase. Game laws, the Lacey Act, John Lacey was a member, a regular member. Migratory Bird Act, the predecessor to DU, that's members of Boone and Crockett started that. Federal Duck Stamp, Dean Darling, he was a member of Boone and Crockett. Founded National Wildlife Federation, Pittman-Robertson Act, that was Boone and Crockett members that made that happen. Founded the Wildlife Management Institute, helped establish the American Wildlife Conservation Partners in the early 2000s, which is a conglomerate of all the national conservation organizations that pooled their influence together to make something happen. Chronic Wasting Disease Alliance, North American Model, which we don't really have a lot of time to talk about, but that was basically the vision of Roosevelt starting with the club and has progressed throughout the years, which is guiding principles of how to manage and sustain wildlife. Many, many others. List of influential members: Theodore Roosevelt, Aldo Leopold. He was a regular member of Boone and Crockett. John Lacey, Gifford Pinchot. Norman Schwarzkopf, William Hornady. Current members, Richard Childress of the racing fame. Johnny Morris of Bass Pro Shop, which is now Cabela's 2. Mark Mondavi, the Mondavi wine family. Believe it or not, he's in California. He's a huge duck hunter. He's a regular member and a friend of mine. Donald Trump Jr. is a regular member. He came through the club with me. I don't claim to be a great friend of his, but he's a super guy, down to earth as hell. And quite frankly, he is a huge ally within this new administration for hunting and conservation. What you have in front of you, this little card here, is kind of what they're trying to do right now from influence in D.C. with legislation.
Yeah, and well, real quick, I want to, Commissioner Mark Whitney, I know Rusty couldn't be here, but real quick, I mean, any thoughts on this as you're seeing tying this back into, y'all stay where you are, guys, and come up, but any thoughts tying this back in other words, how does this affect us, our constituency, you know, going forward as we're hiring these students out of college? I mean, you know, we're seeing that difference in mindset of how we manage and the philosophies of wildlife management.
That's correct. And thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. I appreciate the opportunity. I don't know that I can add a lot more other than maybe put an exclamation point on a couple of these pretty important things. First off, understand, as far as Dale School goes, I went through there 30 years ago, and today, 76% of the students that go into the Warnell School come from a suburban or urban background. When I came through, they were from agricultural backgrounds, timber backgrounds, wildlife and fishing, and that's all they did. They just happened to be a bunch of smart kids that were coming through this school. So you can see where there could be some impacts, in particular losing touch with the rural landscape, how conservation occurs, whether that's conservation related to agriculture or timber management or whatever it may be, and how wildlife ties into that. Once you lose that connection and that concept, and once you don't have, or you're bringing with you to this profession, things like the lessons that your granddaddy taught you when you were coming up hunting and fishing, and what regulated hunting means, and what fair chase, the concept of that is. And by gosh, if you didn't follow it when you were 12, you got swatted across the head. If they don't understand those things, and they're getting all their information from this intense media bombard that they run into all the time, it is
Animal right?
hunting may be a problem. Now for us, we start running into folks who don't really understand how to relate to our primary constituency, hunters and fishermen. They don't understand the funding concept. I know y'all are going to be taking up some licensing issues, fundamentally important to the way that our department runs. Those are all the things that we lose. And things that we do, we partner with Dale in a number of ways. We certainly support these kind of efforts by them. Dale's kind enough to invite us to serve on faculty search committees every time they have a position that's open. So we're there at the table looking for these very grounded, game management oriented, practical application of management and management principles. We're behind science-based management. We just need the kids who are coming into the school to have a basic understanding of that when they come out, and how to be able to talk to the people they're going to run into in the field. My goodness, if we've got a student out there who's working on a project like some of the pictures y'all saw there, and they don't know how to open and close a farm gate, we got a problem. We lose connection with the people that we serve, and that's why it's important.
Members, I got I got two brief questions, and then I do want to talk about the license bill. Representative Donahue was first. Real quick.
Quick question. We understand that our young people are not hunting. We started about 14 years ago, the NWTF with Jake's Day, to have Jake's Day in Hall County, where our first year there were like 16 young people. By our 13th year, we were up to over 2,000. And what we would do was catfish rodeo, skeet shooting, archery, knives throwing, animals, to let people that never see these animals, never see anything, never shot a rifle or a shotgun or whatever, so we're doing BB guns. With this raising money, what I normally would do is we had a group of us would take T-shirts, and we would sell ads on the back of the T-shirt for Boone and Crockett or whatever. Right. During an election time, anybody running for office will pay you $250 to put their name on the back of a shirt, or $500 if you know them pretty well. We raised a ton of money to cover everything. Then we would go to the Bass Pro Walmart and tell them, look, and Morris is on board, we need shotgun shells, we need certain things. By this, we grew these young people to where now we have certain ones have won archery, certain ones that have all of a sudden looked in outdoors, that just because of this, they're avid duck hunters or turkey hunters or whatever. But, you know, that's something I commend you on, but I would look forward to trying to Boone and Crockett spread it through like little clubs, joining up with Ducks Unlimited. When they do a banquet, have them step forward and do something else with the young people a little more advanced.
Hopefully some of those young people may be the next biologist, student that's going through our university system. So great job. All right, Representative Spencer, real quick.
Obviously, you have recognized a sort of a cultural deficit.
Right.
Are you changing your curriculum to address this, and are you forcing these students now into applied learning experiences where they will be exposed to things that they have not been exposed to?
Yes, sir, and I really appreciate that question. We work very hard at understanding. We got a little different student coming in every year. This didn't just happen last year. I've seen it over the 30 years I've been on the faculty. So we do work more of that applied in there. We've done that through some curriculum revisions in the past. That's something we're attentive to. We strongly encourage our students to do internships. So if they're out there with DNR, and DNR has added additional internships lately, which is great. We have retired faculty that take students hunting. It's a group effort for all of us. You just got to recognize you got a little different young person coming in than you did 15, 20 years ago or 40 years ago when I started, and account for that. And one thing that's very important that Mark touched on is who we hire on the faculty. We need to have people there as much as possible that understand the importance of this. Our last hire on the wildlife faculty spent 8 years actually in the agencies as doing jobs similar to these guys. That's something that I'm going to continue to make a priority so that we continue to, as best we can, train people that are ready to go to the field and make a difference.
And understand why they're going to the field.
Absolutely.
Last question.
Yes, sir. Thank you, y'all. I'm sorry, I had my head down, but I was listening. But I'll be 65 this month. I just thought that everybody had some basic idea. I hadn't even thought. I'm from Indiana, and we would hunt and fish and whatnot. Right. Okay, so I see why I'm on the committee. So, but in my district, they hunt out there in South Fulton.
Okay.
You know, so, but with the girls, the NRA gives them scholarships. And one of the things that I have them to do, like when Charleston was here, what is it, 99, whatever year it was, we had the Super Bowl here. We went skeet shooting and we talked. So I guess I thought everybody was doing what I was doing.
No.
Taking your girls, and whatnot.
Representative, you're exactly right. And that's the gap that we're trying to fill. And we've got people who've never seen a gun. We've got people who don't hunt and fish. In fact, in some cases, they may even be anti-hunting and fishing, okay? But yet they're going to be the future wildlife biologists that are deer, ducks, turkey, all of it. Well, that's what I'm saying. That's why this initiative that we're seeing here from Boone and Crockett, and I think that's why this is so very important, and what the dean has recognized here is that we've got to remember conservationists, the original conservationists are the hunters and the fishermen. We're the one, if you get a detachment from the animals or the fish, they have no value. If the preservation, you leave them alone, we all walk away, there's no value to them. Can't be a commercial value, but there's not a value or a love of them or the pursuit of them. And that's what Boone and Crockett has teamed up with the University of Georgia through Dean Green and the Warnell School to do and put this in, and I applaud him. It is going to apply across the board because when you go through one of the law classes, it may not just be the deer biologist, but there are going to be things that are going to be associated, whether they're quail, deer, turkey, or duck, whatever, that's going to do that. And we're going to expose some of these people whose only exposure has been the Animal Planet. And believe me, that's not a great exposure, okay? That they can see really why people are passionate about it. And I can't tell you how this is what we should be focusing on going forward, or we will look back, and we're going to be talking about the way it used to be. And that's a shame. And I'll tell you what we want to do. We're going to help make this effort a success, and I want to make sure that the members know this so that as we can start looking around our communities for our leaders, especially the men and women who are passionate about this, to help Jeff and Dean Green and their efforts so that we can raise the other half that the University of Georgia has already put forward. So,
and my hat's off go to Dale, because unlike a lot of these other programs where the schools have been competing with the club to raise the money, he's been very accommodating and helpful.
So, guys, we're in this all together. We're all going.
But again, I'm willing to make the phone call and ask the question. I just need folks.
Well, if y'all would stay around real quick, along with DU, because I want to make sure the members have an opportunity to talk to you, and I'll talk to you as far as what we can do, put more spotlight on this help.
Thank you.
Real quick, guys, we got one last measure of business. Guys, last year we had the license fee bill that came through. We're sitting here, we're hearing exactly from our two presenters about who pays for conservation, who is the one that's putting the money back in to conserve wildlife, and that's what I'm gonna call the hook and I'm one of them, hook and bullet, the people who hunt and fish, okay. And this bill is Trey Rhodes, one of our new floor leaders, is going to be carrying it. I'll be second signing. I know Chad last year was a sign. I know you're going to be helping again. You were passionate about this, but the bill got dropped. I think was it Thursday or Friday? But so we didn't have time to really get into this meeting. What I'm going to do is I'm going to do similar to what I did last year. We're going to put this into a subcommittee to vet it. And guys, if I put you on a subcommittee, I need you to make every effort to be here so that we can get this bill going and we can make sure that it's the right thing coming out and hurry up and get it out, okay? So with that, the committee, Bruce Broderick, Jimmy Pruitt, John Corbett, Matt Dubnick, Emery Donahue, Chad Nimmer, Jason Shaw, Steve Tarbin, Al Williams. This is who I want on this committee, guys, and I'm very serious. I'm gonna call some some subcommittees, and we're gonna get this bill and we're gonna work on this bill real quick because it's very, very important. As we've added another, we've got 1 million acres out there. We've got to make sure our resources are getting back to DNR to make sure that we're conserving those resources and doing exactly what you saw today. Okay, putting the money back in so our hunters and fishermen have more opportunity and a better quality experience out there, and we continue to go forward in a great way, make Georgia an even better place to hunt and fish in Georgia. So with that, I'll talk to all the committee members, and we'll get going on this. With that, guys, thank you, and I hope you all took something from this meeting. Very important. We are adjourned.